Setting boundaries is a very important part of establishing one's identity, and it's a very critical aspect when it comes to your mental health and well being. Boundaries can be physical or they can be emotional, and they can range from being loose to rigid, and healthy boundaries will typically fall in the middle of that whole spectrum. Now, we can set boundaries for personal space, we can set them for sexuality, we can set them for emotions and thoughts, stuff for possessions, time and energy, culture, religion, and ethics. The word boundary can be misleading. It's stigmatized to convey this idea that it's a complete cutoff, it's a negative concept, but boundaries are actually connecting points since they provide healthy rules that navigate your relationships, whether they be intimate or professional. Now, your personal boundaries very much matter, and the first thing you need to do is understand your limits. So, the first step in learning to set these boundaries is self awareness. That is always going to be key to everything. For example, pay close attention to the situations when you lose energy, when you feel this like heavy knot or pit in your stomach, or when you want to cry. Like if there are certain situations that arise that, if there are certain circumstances that arise that, or something that goes against your intuition, you feel it in your gut. That's how you can develop that self awareness, whether it be with yourself, whether it be with a colleague, whether it be with a person you're pursuing, whether it be with an intimate partner, marriage, children, advisors, anything it may be. Pay attention to that self awareness and establish that and see how you feel in certain situations, or see which situations bring those bodily instinct reactions to you. Now, identifying where you need more space, self respect, energy, or personal power is the first step. Next, after you do that, you need to clearly define what your intellectual, emotional, physical, or even spiritual boundaries are with strangers, work colleagues, friends, family, and intimate partners. Healthy boundaries are boundaries that are set to make sure that you're both mentally and emotionally stable and taken care of, and that you're in a safe space to just thrive and live in. The 10 steps to setting healthy boundaries go as follows. 1. Clearly identify your boundaries. 2. Understand why you need that boundary. 3. Be straightforward. Don't worry about that. Like, if you need to be straightforward about it, if you need to communicate it, that is key to everything, communication. 4. Don't apologize or give long explanations. 5. Use a calm and polite tone. 6. Start with tighter boundaries. 7. Address boundary violations early. 8. Don't make it personal. 9. Use a support system. And 10. Trust your intuition. So what do those mean exactly? The first steps, remember how you have to build that self-awareness, and you have to really see the situations as they go. And then as you see the way the situation makes you react, as you see who brings up those situations, who brings up those reactions, or who violates that certain kind of boundary that you already have, or that certain need that you have, it's important to clearly identify the boundary, and then you understand why you need that boundary. So for example, it can fall into a number of situations. If you were to go through those steps with an intimate partner, or someone you're dating, or someone you're in a relationship with or pursuing, let's say they're not consistent, and that's the thing that sets off red flags to you. That's a big red flag, because your needs in an interpersonal relationship like that is consistency. And let's say, okay, that's not being there. What is it giving me the feeling of? There's a gut intuition that's telling me that this isn't right for me, that this isn't a situation that I want to be in, right? So then you clearly identify that your boundary with this is that that's unacceptable. It's not a part of you that's met. The inconsistency within it is not acceptable. It's not respecting you. So then you would understand why you need it too, because it doesn't fall into what you seek in a relationship. And that's fine, because you have the right to define what it is that you need, not the other person. And then you are straightforward with that. So let's say if that's not working out for you and you feel safe enough to communicate that, then you communicate it. But if you don't feel either safe enough to communicate it, you don't have to communicate it. You can just know that that is there. Or let's say if it's a situation that you feel doesn't hold enough value, or it's a bond that doesn't hold enough value to communicate that, and you just need to know it's not worth the energy to do, because you're not trying to pursue it, you're not trying to continue it, then that's okay too. And if you feel the need to apologize, like let's say if you have self-esteem issues, or you're a highly sensitive individual, or you identify yourself as an empath, it can be kind of hard to not want to give benefit of the doubt. It can be really hard to feel guilty about that. Like, you'll feel guilty about setting those boundaries, but you need to understand that if this person is harming you, if this person is not meeting you where you need them to meet you, you don't have to apologize for not putting up with that behavior. And you don't have to give a long explanation to justify it either, because it simply is what you need and what you need to create and give space for, or carve it out and leave that space open for something that will meet those needs that you have. Now, if you do choose to communicate it, you can use a tone that is more productive and won't be reactive or escalate the situation further. But of course, that is only if you feel you're not in harm's way, you're not in any danger, or you feel like this is something that you want to work on, and you feel like if communicating it will actually get to that solution. Now, you need to start with tighter boundaries. You need to make sure that they're established and they're clear rules, because of the fact that ambiguity will not necessarily get you what you need if you have a clear intention of what it is that you need to communicate with that individual in the relationship that you share. Now, you need to address those boundary violations early. So if you're an individual who struggles with your self-esteem, if you struggle with self-doubt, if you typically feel shame or guilt whenever it comes to standing up for yourself, it can be hard to address it early, because you probably lean more towards wanting to give people many chances or give them the benefit of the doubt, even if they violate a need that you have or violate a boundary that you have. Now, you need to address that early, because those are red flags. Those are situations that need to be brought into light. You need to be like, hey, like, this isn't right, this is unacceptable, and you're able to communicate that, and you're also able to see the person for who they really are, and you're able to understand exactly what it is that you're facing, and then you can cut a lot of time if it's not meant for you, if that makes sense. Now, to make it personal, so let's say you're on the end of the spectrum where you're trying to set a boundary, and this individual is reacting wrong to them in your sense. Like, they're not reacting well to them, they're not stomaching them well, they're not respecting the fact that you're setting those boundaries. Then don't take it personally, because how they are reacting to the fact that you're setting a boundary towards a behavior that's unacceptable says a lot. And let's say if you're on the other side, where someone has asked and communicated a boundary that they need from you, don't take it personally, because that person needs those boundaries. So it's all about trying to understand each other. It's all about being mature enough to be respectful in the whole situation. And another thing is to use a support system. If you are struggling with where you should take the steps, the support system can range from a therapist to a counselor to a trusted friend to a trusted family member to a trusted colleague. It's important to have that, because maybe you're in a situation where you do need advice, you need someone to lean on, you need that support. It's important to get that validation there if you feel like you need it, but it's also important for you to bring it to yourself. But in the meantime, you can have a support system that allows that decision to be made easier, that allows that communication, that rationalization, that conversation to be opened up about what you need. And trust your intuition. So I know this can be a little tricky for individuals who do experience anxiety disorder, because oftentimes your anxiety may feel like it's telling you something. Your anxiety may make you feel like something is wrong, but that doesn't mean that your intuition goes out the window. That doesn't mean that your intuition isn't valuable, because I know sometimes you can question your own thoughts a lot, and it's completely normal. But it's important to differentiate whether it's anxiety or intuition. So an anxious person should know that their intuition is right as well. And the best way to differentiate it is anxious thoughts will often have a tone of what if that makes sense. So the thoughts that will pop up are often going to be what if kind of questions, whereas intuition is going to be this instinctual thing that kicks in, this kind of survival thing that kicks in. It's something that needs a lot of practice to be able to differentiate, but there is a difference. And I want you to know that if you have anxiety disorder, it doesn't mean you should ignore anything that comes up and justify only as anxiety. And if you have a strong intuition, you need to make sure that it does fall into that. I don't know if that makes sense. It's all about assessing it and being very self-aware. It goes back to that statement. Self-awareness is the first step. It is key to everything. And you need to acknowledge your basic rights. You have a right to say no without feeling guilty. You have a right to be treated with respect. You have a right to make your needs as important as others. You have a right to be accepting of your mistakes and your failures. You have a right not to meet others' unreasonable expectations for you. Those are your basic rights, and you need to make sure that you keep that in your head and you reassure that to yourself until it becomes natural for you and until it becomes not so hard to do that, and you're better able to assess situations and you're better able to assess other people's intentions and communicate very efficiently and proactively with other people. So you need to develop a healthy respect for yourself. That's the key. You setting these boundaries, you watching this video, you taking any sort of step for your mental health and well-being is a form of love. It is a form of self-respect. And all of your experiences, including your mistakes you've made, help shape your character. They helped shape who you are. And no one besides you, no matter how persuasive they may be, can define you or try to control who you are. When you respect yourself, all of who you are, you should expect that others will treat you with respect. If they don't, that's a clear sign not to engage. You are in charge of your choices, so we actually have a lot more power than we think we do. We do have the say-so in our lives. Like I know life can have its unpredictability, its uncertainty, but in the situations that you do have control over, you are in charge of your choices. You are in charge of creating that beautiful environment and that beautiful life that's conducive to you. You do have a say-so into what you want to accept into your life and how you want to approach things in your life. You have the right to change your mind or direction at any point. You don't need to feel that you owe anyone anything more than you want to give with your free and conscious heart. Anyone who mistreats you, who is disrespectful of your wishes, refuses to hear you, and has no intention of changing, is trouble. So be ready to walk away without fear or guilt and don't look back. If that's the case, even if it's family, even if you feel obligated, even if it's a situation where, that must be the most difficult, family or someone you've known for a long time. If your boundaries aren't being respected, if your existence isn't being respected, you should be able to feel free to walk away without feeling guilty if it's not nourishing you, if it's not serving you anymore. Your personal boundaries matter, and never let anyone tell you otherwise. It's not always going to be easy. It's always a little work in progress. It's these baby steps that we need to take for ourselves in order to ensure that there is a healthy environment set aside for ourselves, that there is a very healthy path into our mental health, that there is someone looking out for you, because in a world, maybe not everybody will look out for you. Maybe not everybody will meet your needs. Maybe not everybody will give you that respect and love, because we can encounter a wide spectrum of people, right? But what's important is that you give yourself that respect. You give yourself those needs. You meet those, you communicate them, and you set that aside for yourself. You make sure that you are the person willing to listen to yourself and willing to support your mental health, willing to support your well-being. And you have all that power, and you have done that by watching this video. And you are gonna do that by taking a moment after this to reflect on situations in your life, to reflect on your relationships, and ensure where you need your healthy boundaries set. I hope that this has been helpful. Have a great mental health day. Thank you.